Hi, welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about polar bear ornaments. These are a hand knit pattern available over at redheart.com for free. So all you need to do is click on that link right down there in the video notes and you will get the pattern for free for these polar bears. In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew the polar bear parts together. The reason I'm not showing you how to make the entire polar bear is because this pattern is an intermediate pattern that uses very basic stitches. It has knits and purls, knit front and back, and then knit two togethers. Really simple stuff. So I feel like as an intermediate knitter, you don't really need to know those things. But if you've never made a stuffed animal ornament type things before, I feel like that's where I can help you out. I can show you how to seam it together and talk to you about a couple little finishing tricks with the parts that you can do. And so that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. So once again, if you're looking for the instructions for the polar bear ornaments, those are available at redheart.com. You can find the link to that down there in the video notes. And to complete the polar bears, all you're going to use are a couple skeins of Red Heart soft yarn and some double pointed needles, and make sure you have some fiber fill and a couple of stitch markers. Why don't we go ahead and jump in and take a look at some of the pieces. As you look down here, you can kind of see all the mix and match parts of the polar bear, right? I decided to go ahead and make the body the 100% white, so I don't have the sweater on there, but I could have made the sweater. It's totally up to you what you want to do, but I figured for the videos today, it was best to kind of stick with white. You can see I have the polar bear head, I have the four legs, the body, I have a tail and two ears. And this little thing here was my first attempt at an ear, and it just really, I struggled with it a lot. So let's start there, okay? I figure if you're gonna make the head, you already know how to do the double points, you know how to do the decreases, so we're not gonna really focus too much on the head. But when we talk about the ears, it talks about, you need to make two ears, obviously, but you're gonna cast on 5 stitches, and then it says round 1 and 2 knit. So do you take those 5 stitches and divide them evenly among the 3 double pointed needles and then knit in the rounds? Because it says rounds 1 and 2 you knit. Well, you can totally do that. That's what I did right here. I had like 2 stitches on one needle and 1 stitch and 1 stitch on other needles. It was very difficult to do. And when I finished it, it came out like this. It just looks like a blob to me. And so I was like, there has to be a different way. So let's try this. So what I did then was I cast on 5 stitches, and then I purled a row, and then I knit a row, and then I took my tapestry needle and I took it through all of the live stitches, and I pulled the live stitches really close, and then I tied the tails together, and I got this really cute little ear. So I like this. I think that's the way I would suggest doing it if you're having a really hard time with the 5 stitches on double points. I think this looks super cute because when I put it up against the head, look how cute that looks. It looks like a polar bear ear. So I found that to be really easy. So that would be my first tip, okay, when you're talking about the ears. Regarding the tail, I did the same thing. Instead of knitting in the round, I went ahead and I cast on 5 stitches, and then I purled back, and then I thread my needle right through the live stitches, and I tied it real nice and tight. So now I have this nice little like boopy tail right there. And I think that that's really cute. So that's my second tip. My third tip is when you're at the end of your work and it's time to take your tail and weave it through all of your live stitches, instead of taking your tapestry needle and sticking it into the stitches as if to purl, so they're all on your needle and you're going them in as if to purl like this, take your tapestry needle and go in as if to knit each one. So as they're resting on your knitting needle, go in and as if to knit each one of the stitches and then pull the tail through. What happens is you get a really nice finish on the pieces, okay? It comes all together and it almost looks like a flower. I feel like it just looks so much better of a finish. So if you do that, take your tapestry needle, go in as if to knit instead of as if to purl when you're pulling the tail through, and I think that you'll just be really pleasantly surprised with the final result, okay? So those are the biggest tips. The other tip I have is to make sure that the 4 legs are the same size. Really use a tally mark to make sure you really are doing just those 15 rows before you go into the increases and then the decrease shaping before you do the bottom of the leg. Once you have all those pieces together, you're ready to really get started and start piecing it together. So you have to make a decision whether you want your polar bear to be sitting up or sitting down or whatever you want it to be, because that will all depend on where you want to put your arms, okay? Your arms and your legs. So for me, I want to make my polar bear as if it was sitting down. So I want it to sit down like this. So I have this nice bottom, and that's where I'm going to put my polar bear, okay? So I have it, and I'm just going to squish it right there. And when I do that, I'm going to take the head of my polar bear, and you can see the really pretty shaping that I've created, right? It's just really pretty shaping. And so as I turn the head around back, you know, I just try and find which area or which angle do I think looks the prettiest. And to me, I think I like that one. I think that one looks the best if I put 2 eyes right there and then make my triangle nose right there and put my ears back there. So given that I'm going to select this as the best view, I would take this and I'm going to match it up to the body. You see how it's parallel to the body? And what I'm going to do now is I could go ahead and take some T-pins and pin it into place just to make sure it's secure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this down just like that, knowing that that's where I want it to be. I'm going to take my bent tip steel tapestry needle and I'm going to have my tail that's already attached. I left a really long tail so I can use it for seaming. I'm going to thread it onto my tapestry needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the head, make sure it's still the way I want it. It is. And I'm just going to rest it right up there. You see that? And going along my cast on edge of my body, I'm going to come into the head and I'm going to pick up stitches. Okay, and I'm just going to sew it into place. Now, as I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I'm not accidentally making it lopsided and I'm making like the stitches too tight or anything. And by having this bent tip, it makes it really easy to get into the stitches there and really pull it through. And I'm just going to go all the way around. Now, you want to remember that you want the head, like the snout of the polar bear, you don't want that part attached, right? So you want to make sure that you're holding it in place wherever you want it to be attached. And I'm just going to go around the polar bear. And maybe I'm going to tack it all down here at the beginning. And then I can go back and tuck in any ends maybe that need to be pulled in one more time. Let's see if I can go through this a couple more times. You can see I'm just going into my cast on edge right here and I'm just picking up some of the stitches into the head. And you know, if you pick up in the wrong place and you need to pull out and redo it, totally fine. This doesn't have to be absolutely perfect the first time around, especially if this is the first time you've ever done a stuffy before or an ornament that's pre-stuffed. You do the best you can. Give yourself a little bit of slack and just, you know, sew it into place how you think is best. I like that so far. I think it looks good. Really don't have to hang on to it too much anymore. It's kind of a little bit stable. I'm going in back here, and as I'm coming over here, I'm going to make sure I'm grabbing these stitches, and I'm going to grab them along the side here. And I feel like that's going to be important because I don't want them to start poking through. So I'm going to make sure I keep grabbing my cast on edge and coming around. Now what's really great is this design, it comes with a pattern to make a little scarf for the polar bear. So if I happen to make my stitches a little bit too big, or maybe my seaming just really isn't that pretty and I just want to hide it, great, I have a nice little scarf. And so how convenient is that? And I chose to make my scarf lengthwise, I guess is the right way to say it, and I did seed stitch instead of ribbing as written in the pattern. So if I set this down here, I can see, oh look, there's my little polar bear. He's starting to take shape, right? So I could take my end and I could weave it in right now. I'm gonna just let it hang out because I wanna make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be before I weave in my end completely. I am gonna go ahead and tuck in this tail on the back of the head. I left the tail out there because I wasn't sure if I was gonna need it for weaving in it all, but I don't think I do. So I'm just going to pop it up that way, and then look at this. If I come all the way through and I just pop it right through there, I bring it through the head and I can just snip it right there. and the tail will suck in to the head and I don't have to worry about it. So it's inside the head. So that's really easy. Once I have the head in place, I can start manipulating everything else, right? I can go ahead and I could take the ears, and let's go ahead, let's see if we could do it 2 at a time. Let's just give it a whirl together. And so I'm gonna thread both tails on here because what I did, as I said before, is I tied a knot at the bottom. When I pulled the string really tight through the loops, I tied a knot with the cast on edge and the edge, my final tail. So if I sit this up here, let's see, let's look at my decrease lines right here, and I'm gonna come along my decrease line right up here to the top, and let's just put my ear right there. Let's see what that will look like. Oh, that's adorable. And you can decide which direction you want it to be in. Oh, I like that direction. So I'm gonna come back through the ear, and I know my big old hands are in the way. You can see, you can manipulate where the ear looks, right? The placement of the ear, just by where you go into the stitches. So I'm gonna go back through the ear here, and let's go down into the head and see what we have. I'm just gonna tuck this down, and let's see. So I have a nice little ear. Look how cute that is. That is adorable. All right, I'm just gonna cut my tail right there. I'm gonna snip it off, and we're gonna call that one good. That's a cute little ear. Let's do the other ear. I'm gonna do it 1 at a time this time. Let's see how that looks. That one worked out fine, so let's see how it will do if we just do 1 at a time. So again, if I follow along my decrease path, just to kind of give myself a pretty regular placement, let's just stick it right there. And again, you know what? You can be creative with this as much as you want. You can decide, you know, Marley, I want them maybe more on the side of the head, or maybe I want them back more. You can absolutely do that. This is your stuffed animal, and you can pick the placement of your stuffed animal, right? You can pick where you want the ears. I know my fingers are in the way, you guys. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it stabilized so that way we can see what we have here. All right, so this is, remember I only have one side I'm tucking in right now, so let's go ahead and tuck in the other side. Maybe that will pull things down in place a little bit. I find when I did the first one, I found that when I did the sewing together in this sequence, in the sense of I put the head on, I put my head placement on first, and then I decided where I wanted the ears to be. It just was easier to work that way. It was easier for me to see where everything needed to be. And so it's just lovely. It's all these little extra bits that give your ornament or your stuffed animal, whichever you're making, I mean, you can use this information for stuffed animals as well. It gives it character. So any sort of little, what you might think of as an imperfection, can give your piece some character. I'm gonna pull this down. You can see I just have my ends hanging out there. Let's give that a try. Give those a nice little nip. Tuck that away. Nip, tuck that away. I'm feeling pretty good about that. What do you think? Looks pretty good so far. So as I do that, what I need to do now is I need to do the leg placement. So if I have this sitting down, I need to decide, all right, do I want my legs like really close together? Do I want them kind of far apart? Do I need them underneath the body? You know, what do I want? So you can take a look at the pattern itself and look at the leg placement that the designer has done before, or you can decide, you know, I'm just gonna decide on my own what I wanna do. I think that if I put my leg placement so that if this is resting flat and I have this leg and I butt it up right up flat against that, can you see that? If I'm going like that, see like this? See how it's not completely towards the bottom, it's a little bit higher? I think it's actually gonna sit better. I think it's gonna sit better if I have it just right there. So let's go ahead, let's thread my tail onto my needle, and let's do our placement. Let's give this a try. So if we have, let's put a leg right there, and let's just stick it in. Oops. Put my leg right there. You could use T-pins or maybe quilter's pins or anything like that to make all this stay in place if you want. It's up to you, whatever works for you. I find that just using my fingers and just playing around with it, it works just fine. Now, here's another thing. You can decide whether you want to keep this leg like still real circular or squish it down to be real condensed down and flat. Totally up to you. You can decide whichever way you want to seam that leg into place and make it really work for you. So I'm going to bring this around. Let's hold that in place. Can you see that? And I'm just grabbing, again, I'm grabbing some yarn here from the body, and then I'm going to grab some from the leg. And I'm just going to kind of keep them together so that it's not super ugly, especially for the legs. I just want them to be nice and neat. I'm grabbing some from the body and some from the leg. There we are. You see that? All the way around. Making sure that my video is recording still. Here we go. Now, here's the thing. If this isn't really in the right place and you're like, you know what, I want to go back, I want to redo that, you can do that. You just, snip the yarn and decide that you want to just tuck it in a different way. You can decide to do that. It's totally fine. I'm going to take my tail in and bring it down here. I feel like that's pretty good. It's not too bad. Leave that like that just so I can go back, and I don't like how that little thing's budding out, but I can fix that, so I'm not worried about that. I'm gonna leave that right there. And I would go on, I would do the same thing with my next leg, and then I do the same thing with my arms. I find their placement. Now, as I mentioned, I did make a scarf, and what I did is I cast on, I think I cast on 40 stitches, and then I worked in seed stitch, and then I bound off. I worked in seed stitch for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and then I bound off. And so what I could do now is I could take my nice little scarf, once this is done, and I could wrap it around my polar bear, and it would just look like that. It would look super cute. And now the last thing to do, just to give this the final look, is you can go back and you can either do French knots with some black embroidery floss and put some eyes there. You could use beads for eyes, or you, and then you need to do a nose. So you use the same black embroidery floss and make yourself a nice triangle nose right there, and your little polar bear is complete. Hopefully I gave you some tips and tricks on how to really make this polar bear work out for you, and you can make these super cute little holiday ornaments for yourself or for a little kid in your life or a loved one. I think that they would just be absolutely precious to line up. Maybe instead of elf on the shelf, you have polar bear on the shelf. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please smash that like button, as my kids say, give it a thumbs up, and go ahead and hit subscribe so you're up to date whenever there's a new video released right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. I'm Marley Bird for redheart.com. Bye-bye.